If you've ever wanted to make a clock inside of Dreams but couldn't figure it out, fear not, because I'm going over that right now. Okay, this is really fast and easy, so I will get out a microchip, and this is going to be our clock logic. The clock logic will take in one input, and that will be for pausing time, and so I'll set that to a flag, and we'll deal with that in a little bit. Now to display numbers, we're going to have to get out some number displayers here. We'll actually get 4 out, and these will be for our hours and our minutes, so I'll label these hours and these will be minutes. Now I'm going to change the style of all of these so that they look a little bit more like a clock, a digital clock. I'll turn off the border and the shadow and all that stuff, and for now I will align them so that they are vertically aligned, and actually I'll put them up at the top. I'll make them center aligned, and I'll leave the vertical alignment as custom. And so we can move these around real quick just to put them in their places. I'll use precise move here. And just to have them be centered around something, I will center them around a colon. The colon will also have the same font. This will also not have a text box or shadow or any of that stuff. And this we can put in the dead center of the screen. So with this in the dead center of the screen, we can then adjust things with our hours and minutes so that they look correct. Okay. So I'm going to do this real fast, so I'll just speed up time here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'll just get out the AM, PM displayers. Okay, so there we have all of our displayers set up, and I'm going to put these in their own chip for display that I'll just label display, and this is just to organize things a little bit better. So this display will take in the AM, PM switch, it'll take in the hours, it'll take in the minutes. So the AM, PM switch, which we have down here, I'll label these. So I'll bring AM and PM in, and I will use a selector to switch between these two. So A will power AM, B will power PM, and this will change the input-output. So I'll label this AM, PM switch. So there we have that. I'll bring the colon in here just so that it's put into this chip as well. And now all we have to do is deal with our numbers, meaning our hours and our minutes. So say we have hours coming in here and minutes coming in here. We'll deal with 1 first. This is going to be a number from 0 to 59 for the minutes. The hours will be a number from 12, well, it would be from 1 to 12. So if we get a calculator out, we can divide a number that we get in by 10, and that'll give us our tens place. So if 9 were coming in here, we'd get 9 divided by 10. That'd be less than 1. So we will round down as well. And so if 9 came in here, it would divide by 10. It would get 0 point something, and then it would get rounded down to 0. And that would be our display for our hours in the tens place. So we see we have the hours here and the hours there, so this is the tens place, and we can plug that in. To get the ones place, instead of dividing by 10, we will get the remainder after division when dividing by 10, and that will give us a number in the ones place. So the hours can come in here like this, and that would be our ones place. So if we have 9 coming in, 9 divided by 10 would give us 0 with a remainder of 9, and so it would output a 9. Now if we had 11 coming in here, 11 divided by 10 gives us a 1, but we're getting the remainder, so we'd get a remainder of 1, and that's what would go in the ones place. So we can copy this whole thing down like this, and do the same exact thing for the minutes. So the minutes would come here, and the other minutes would come here. And that's all of our display logic. So in order to get it to actually count numbers, now all we have to do is add the logic. I'll get out some counters. One will be for hours and one will be for minutes. The hours will set the target value to 11. And what we'll do is we'll get out a calculator and we'll add 1. And the reason I'm doing this is because our numbers go from 1 to 12. They don't go from 0 to 12. They go from 1 to 12. So when this is 0, the output of this would be 1. And when this is at 11, the output would be 12. And then for the minutes, we can just set the target value to 59 because minutes on a digital clock go from 00 to 59. So if we have our current count going into our minutes displayer and our count from here going into the hours displayer, we would have that's how we would display things. So you can see right now it's at 1 a.m. and of course if I crank that all the way up, now we're at 12 a.m., right? And the numbers here, we can see if we play with them, this is how they look. So in order to get this to work, I'll get out a timer, and for now I'll just set it to something small like 0.5 seconds. This will always repeat, and every time it's done, it should increase the count on our minutes counter. This is basically our minutes. Obviously, we can change how fast or slow they go. And to do so is very easy. I'll get out a value slider, and this will be our seconds per minute. And this can go from anywhere as small as 1 frame, which is 0.033 seconds. And we can set the max value to whatever. I mean, you could set it to 60 if you wanted it to represent real time. But if you wanted it to go even slower than real time, then you'd set it higher than 60. And so the minimum value is 1 frame, as we can see here. And so if we have this plugged in as our target time and make sure it's set to overwrite, then we'll be moving at 1 frame. Every frame will count as 1 minute, right? And of course, if we increase this to 1 second, then every 1 second would be considered 1 minute of time. So I've labeled this seconds per minute just so it's clear that's what that does. I will bring this back a little bit just to help clean things up. And so this pause time node, which I will label as pause time, in order to pause time, all we have to do is get out a keyframe, which will turn this timer off. And so as long as the signal is coming in to pause time, then it should pause the time. We can show that this works by plugging a switch in. We can see the time is climbing, but if we ever needed to pause time for any reason, we could turn on some signal that goes into here and it pauses the timer as long as the signal is positive. And then when we're done, we can continue. And so now all we have to do is deal with the rollover on the time, right? Because as of right now, once it gets to 59, it just gets stuck, right? So we have to deal with how we're going to roll over the time. Now to keep things neat, I'm going to get out a microchip, and this will deal with rolling our time. And so I've labeled this hour complete logic, and this is the logic that we'll use when our hour is complete. So I'll get out a node. So this node here is essentially every time one of our minutes is done. Then we'll need another node to signal that our minutes are full, and another node for our hours being full. So this counterful will go in here, this counterful will go here, and this minutes pulse is going into here. Now we're going to output whether or not we should be switching AM PM. We're also going to be outputting whether or not we are going to roll the hours over, and also when we should roll the minutes over. Once we get to this point here in time, what we need to do is reset the minutes so they go back to 0. We also need to increase the counter here for the hours to go to 2. And that's it for this one particular situation. So in this case, what we need to do is decide that since both the minute is complete, meaning we're receiving a pulse for the next minute to happen, and our minutes are full, we need to send a signal out to reset this minutes timer. Right, so now if we press play, we can see once it hits 59, it rolls back. Okay? Now we also need to decide that since the minutes are full and we've received this signal here, I'm actually going to increase this to 3 gates. So we've received a pulse, our minutes are full, and our hours are not full. Then we need to increase the count on our hours counter here. So now when we press start or start time, we can see once it gets to 59, it rolls over. Now, a similar thing for the hours. If our hours are full and our minutes are full and we're receiving a new minute, then we could output this signal to reset this timer. Now there's a problem here. This works for almost every hour except for one in particular. But we can see that it is working. And of course, if I change this to be noon here, we can see that once it gets to 12:59, it should roll over and go to 1. Right? Now, what it doesn't work for currently is at 11, what happens is once we hit 11:59, both the minutes counter is full, and a signal is sent to increase it, which makes it so that both of these AND gates are true at the same time, and it'll roll over from 11:59 to 1, which is not what we want. So in order to avoid this problem, all we have to do is just add one little thing here. I'm going to get out a exclusive gate, and I'm going to drag this over a little bit just to make some more room for ourselves. So we'll get this exclusive gate, and these AND gates will go into them, and I will name both of them the same thing. So since we care about the rollover happening, I'm going to set the priority on this exclusive gate to be one higher than this one. And so if we ever get to that situation where it's 11:59, only one of these will turn on and it'll be the rollover, and then we won't also increase the count at the same time. So we can see here, once it gets to 11:59, it should roll over to 12. Now, in order to deal with the AM/PM switch, all we have to do is use the counter full here and plug that in, because AM switches to PM and vice versa when from 11:59 to 12. And so there, that would switch it to PM once it hits 12, and then of course once it goes all the way back around to 11:59 and then to 12, it'll switch back to AM. And so I've just cleaned up the wires so that things look a little bit better here, and we're done. Everything's all set up. We have our display working the way we want it to. We have our hours and minutes rolling over the way they should, and it works. So in order to put this on any sort of object that you create, like a clock sculpt or whatever, you would come into your display and you would change these hours and minutes things and all these displayers in here to be in scene. You drag them where you want, and they should work exactly the way you expect them to. I'll go ahead and make this logic public and remixable so that you can grab this and put it into anything you want. I hope this was helpful, or at least interesting. If you're interested in me doing a tutorial on any other type of smaller gameplay logic type system like this, please let me know. I'd be happy to help out. Consider subscribing to my channel if you're interested in seeing more tutorials. And take care. I'll see you next time.